The observation deck of the celestial horizon hummed with the quiet efficiency of a ship traversing the void between stars. Sarah Chen stood before the reinforced viewport, her reflection ghosting across the endless black, watching a cargo transport dock with practiced precision. 3 months into her assignment as the ship's xenobiologist, and she still marveled at the mundane miracle of faster-than-light travel. "Dr. Chen, we have a situation in Quarantine Bay 3. Sarah turned to find Lieutenant Kovac, the security officer, his expression somewhere between concern and bewilderment. That particular combination usually meant something had gone wrong with one of their specimens. "What kind of situation?" she asked, already moving toward the corridor. "The Crixian cub. It's aggressive. Attacked Handler Morrison when he tried to feed it. We've sedated it twice, but it keeps waking up more agitated than before." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Crixians were apex predators from a high-gravity world in the Theta sector, all corded muscle and crystalline fangs designed to crush bone. The Galactic Council had classified them as a protected species after their homeworld's ecological collapse, and this cub, one of only 43 known survivors, was being transported to a conservation habitat on Kepler 442b. The cub they designated as the Quarantine Bay was a sterile white chamber, one wall dominated by a transparent aluminum barrier. Behind it, Max paced with mechanical repetition, his 6 legs carrying his 2-meter frame in tight circles. His scales, which should have shimmered with adolescent iridescence, were dull gray. His eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangular pattern, tracked every movement outside the barrier with predatory focus. Handler Morrison sat on a medical cot, his arm wrapped in regenerative bandaging. "Damn thing nearly took my hand off," he muttered. "I'm done. You want to feed it, you do it yourself." Sarah studied Max through the barrier. She'd reviewed the Crixian behavioral files a dozen times. Apex predators, yes. Aggressive when threatened, absolutely. But the files also noted something the Galactic Council seemed to have overlooked in their clinical assessments. Crixians were pack animals, social creatures. This cub hadn't seen another of his kind in 4 months, had been poked, prodded, and sedated by beings who approached him with fear. No wonder he was snapping. "I'm going in," Sarah announced. "That's against protocol," Kovac protested. "We're supposed to use remote feeding mechanisms for Class 5 predators. Your protocol is making him worse." Sarah pulled on a standard-issue jacket, checking the med kit at her hip. "He's not feral. He's terrified." Before anyone could argue further, she cycled through the airlock. The moment she stepped into Max's enclosure, the temperature difference hit her. The environmental controls maintained the space at 38 degrees Celsius, mimicking Crixian conditions. Max stopped pacing immediately, his 3 eyes fixing on her with laser intensity. Sarah remained still, controlling her breathing. In her peripheral vision, she could see Kovac and Morrison pressed against the observation barrier, hands hovering near emergency protocols. Max's lips peeled back, revealing rows of diamond-hard teeth. A low rumble built in his chest, the Crixian threat display. He took 1 step forward, then another, his massive head lowering. Sarah didn't retreat. Instead, she crouched slowly, making herself smaller, less threatening. She extended 1 hand, palm down, fingers relaxed. The universal gesture of peaceful intent that Earth's animal handlers had used for millennia. Max's rumble intensified. He moved closer, near enough that Sarah could smell the mineral scent of his scales, could feel the heat radiating from his body. His breath came in sharp snorts as he analyzed her scent. Then he snapped. The movement was lightning fast, those crystalline jaws closing around her hand with enough force to crush stone. But Sarah had been watching his muscle tension, had seen the snap coming in the microsecond before it happened. She didn't pull away, that would trigger his prey drive. Instead, the moment his jaws closed, she used her free hand to tap him firmly on the nose. Not hard enough to hurt. Just enough to surprise. Max froze, his eyes widening in what Sarah could only interpret as shock. In that moment of confusion, Sarah maintained eye contact and spoke in a calm, even tone. "No, that's not acceptable behavior." For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Sarah could hear her own pulse thundering in her ears, could feel the pressure of those jaws around her hand, not yet biting, but capable of it. Then Max released her. The cub stepped back, his head tilting in a gesture eerily reminiscent of a confused dog. The rumbling in his chest changed pitch, becoming less threatening, more curious. He sat back on his haunches, his 6 legs folding beneath him in a position the files had labeled as juvenile submission. Sarah remained crouched, maintaining her non-threatening posture. Slowly, she extended her hand again. This time, Max's approach was different, cautious, investigative. He pressed his snout against her palm, huffing softly as he scented her skin. "That's better," Sarah murmured. "See? We can communicate." She reached for the feeding container she'd brought with her, opening it to reveal chunks of synthesized protein, calibrated to Crixian nutritional needs. She held out a piece. Max's eyes tracked it, but he didn't snatch. Instead, he waited until Sarah nodded before gently taking it from her hand. "Good," she praised, offering another piece. The change was remarkable. With each piece of food exchanged through respectful interaction rather than fearful distance, Max's scales began to brighten. The dull gray shifted toward bronze, then copper, hints of that youthful iridescence beginning to show through. After the 10th piece, Max made a sound Sarah had never heard in any of the behavioral recordings. A deep, resonant rumbling that vibrated through the deck plating. His 3 eyes half closed, and then, to Sarah's amazement, he rolled onto his back, exposing his belly scales, the most vulnerable part of a Crixian's anatomy. The rumbling continued, almost like purring. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She placed her hand on Max's chest, feeling the vibrations travel up her arm. "There you are," she whispered. "There's the real you." Behind the barrier, she could hear excited chatter from the observation team. Later, there would be reports to file, protocols to update, debates about whether her actions had been reckless or revolutionary. But in this moment, Sarah simply sat with Max, an apex predator from a dying world and a human who understood that sometimes the greatest dangers came from fear itself, and that compassion could bridge even the vastness of space. Max's rumbling deepened, his 6 legs twitching with contentment as Sarah continued her gentle ministrations. In that sterile quarantine bay, countless light years from both their homeworlds, 2 beings from different corners of the galaxy found common ground in the simplest of truths. Respect earned trust, and trust built bonds that no amount of teeth or claws could break. That was the human way, after all, to extend a hand even when it might be snapped at, to see the individual behind the instinct, to refuse to let fear dictate compassion. And as Max rolled back onto his feet, his scales now gleaming with healthy iridescence, pressing his massive head against Sarah's shoulder in what could only be interpreted as affection, she knew that this moment would ripple far beyond this room. The galaxy was watching how humanity treated the vulnerable, the displaced, the frightened. She intended to show them something worth seeing.